listen, how could you not been excited when the news broke? We all know Ben Johnson was the prize this year, right? And the guy that everyone talks about, and we've all watched for years now because he was at the Lions. He's an excellent offense coordinator. He's an excellent play designer. He looks like he takes the details out of the game for his football players. I read a few quotes from Amon-Ra St. Brown about how he takes the gray out of the game. And that's what you're looking for out of a coach, guys. And when you have a young quarterback, he's going to challenge Caleb. He's going to make him study the plays, study things, process information. This is the guy everybody was going after. And the Bears, give them credit. And I made a joke this week, today on Twitter. Did we win the offseason again? Are we the champs again, right? But this is a guy that everybody did want. The Bears went and got him. So a little credit goes their way for going to get the OC, the head coach, the guy that everybody was after this offseason.
Tell us more about taking the gray out of the game for players.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, topic, because you've always heard coaches talk about, okay, I want my guys to play fast, right? And what that is you give them a very clear idea of the play and exactly what you want them to do, and you take all the questions out. That way they just take the snap, they play fast, they know what they're looking for from the defense. When you have a good coach, guys, as I'm sure you guys have had on many levels, you know when you have one. You know when you have a good coach, a guy who, when he says something, you're like, man, that makes sense, right? And it's like when a coach tells you how to do something, you always have to ask them how. That's a very important question when a coach says, look, I want you to do this. And then you ask him how, and then he's able to explain himself. And when you just listen to people talk about him, right, like Zach Taylor said, I think before the Super Bowl he played in, that he was always trying to get Ben Johnson on his staff because he's a brilliant mind. You hear the players talk about how he's detail-oriented. He's always taking the questions out of the game. He allows them to play fast. He tells them exactly what they need to do versus exactly what look, exactly what the Bears say. They're playing the Lions, they're playing the Bears. This is exactly how the Bears are going to line up. This is exactly how we're going to attack them. This is how we're going to win the football game. And like he said in that clip coming in, right, like, I'm going to give Penei Sewell the ball, and he's probably just going to try to run it in. Like, he knows those kind of things going into football games.
You know, when you talk about it, Olin, I find myself thinking about the Lions offense, which has been so great to watch. And there's a temptation to say, well, they've got this player and that player and this player and that player. But as a group, they have looked so decisive and so like definitive and just like you're talking about playing fast. Like everything they do has been with this great conviction that just makes it seems to make it run better. Is that what good coaching looks like sometimes?
For sure. You just described exactly what good coaching looks like. And obviously, in the NFL, you need the players too, right? And we all know what the Lions had on their offense. We've watched them for so many years now, come out and put, I think they led the league for 2 years in a row in scoring points. And there's a reason for that, right? They have the players and they have the coaching staff. But Ben Johnson, when you did, I know you guys had Mike Martz talk about Ben Johnson, talk about the way he stacks plays, the way he makes adjustments in games, the way he attacks teams, the way he attacks coverages, the way he attacks front, and always seems to be one step ahead of the defensive coordinator. We all seen him and Coach Eberflus have a lot of really, really good battles. So that is what good coaching looks like. Obviously, he's going to have to answer a lot of the questions of what is it like to actually develop a young quarterback, right? What young quarterbacks has he developed? I know he was around Ryan Tannehill, but, Goff came in. He already learned from McVay. He was an older quarterback. He knew a lot about the NFL. He already had a lot of knowledge. So this may be a first time we get to see him hands-on with a young quarterback, develop a young guy. Those are the questions he's got to answer. How do you do it without an elite offensive line, elite wide receiver group, and two really good running backs and a good tight end? So they had a lot of guys up there at Detroit, and these are the questions that Ben Johnson has to answer. But coming into it, guys, this is the guy that everybody did want, right? If you have a young quarterback and you happen to get the hot OC that everybody wanted and a guy that no matter where you go, no matter who you talk to, they talk about his attention to detail, his ability to set the standard, and his intensity he brings to the building every day.
It seems like he also wants to run the ball and has helped to say, hey, let's build a team that can do it as well. When you look at their offense, the Lions offense, and now you have Caleb Williams to be put into it, what types of things do you think will allow Caleb to have success?
immediately you think about play action pass, right? When you watch the Lions, I know a lot of people are talking about it. Obviously, you hear it on ESPN, you hear everyone talk about how well Ben Johnson used the play action pass with Goff. But Jared Goff is very good from under center, faking the run, getting his drop, setting his feet, and driving the ball down the field. These are the things you want to see Caleb do. Those are the things, like you guys know, help a young quarterback who got sacked a hell of a lot this year, right? So run the football, get a couple more better offensive linemen in the building. We've talked about that for way too many years, right? Emphasize the run game. Interested to see, guys, obviously the personnel changes this year, right? I'm sure he'll have a say on that. He also was a tight end coach. So interested to see what he thinks about the tight end position. He knows what an elite offensive line looks like. Interested to see what he thinks about the offensive line. He knows what a power run game looks like, what a dangerous run game looks like. Interested to see what he thinks about the Chicago Bears run game, right? You think about all these things. Now, he does have DJ Moore, who you think, man, Amon-Ra St. Brown, DJ Moore, two very similar football players. So that kind of fits in right there. But as far as making Caleb better, we all know a good run game is a young quarterback's best friend. A play action game even helps a young quarterback more, who was struggling with a lot of getting hit a lot this year and taking sacks and getting sacked by an offensive line that sometimes is overwhelmed. But like we all know, watching this year, sometimes he held the ball way too damn long.
You read my mind. The next thing that I wrote down to talk to you about was play action. So how can this be a weapon for Caleb Williams? And from what you've seen, and I know it's limited as some of the stuff that we saw with Caleb, like under center using play action, but looking at a lot of the stuff that Goff does, I love the way that they're able to freeze linebackers with this. And I feel like Caleb could really benefit from doing more of it.
Yeah, and who is the quarterback coach that Ben wants to bring in, right, to help develop Caleb? And like you're saying, Lawrence, when I watched him from under center this year, he wasn't great at it. And you don't expect him to be, right? How much under center do you think a young, really good quarterback with all these 7-on-7 camps nowadays, with all these things these quarterbacks do and the way most college offenses are run, how much under center football do these quarterbacks actually play? And I didn't think he was very good at it, to be honest with you. I didn't think he was quick coming out of it. I didn't think the exchange was good. The mesh between him and the running back and the play action cell wasn't great. But these are the details that a guy like Ben Johnson will coach, and he will demand that it's done correctly from March, from April. And we know, guys, since he's the head coach, they're not going to fire the OC, right, this year. So we'll have our OC all year. He'll be working on the same things. He'll be in the same system. He'll have one guy developing him. And if it works out, you got what you wanted for a long time. You got a coach, a system, and a young quarterback. So when you look at this right now, it's hard to be, super excited about the Chicago Bears or what we've been through over the last, who knows how long. So many years there hasn't been a lot of winning. We've been excited in the offseason. We were excited last offseason. But this is a good hire for Chicago Bears. They went out and got their guy, right? They put the money down. They went and got the guy who people thought was the best candidate, and a guy who can develop their young quarterback, and a guy who looks like he knows about offenses and adjusting and running the football and getting the ball down the field and putting the ball in the end zone, something the Chicago Bears sorely need.
He's putting a staff together. You don't ask Ben Johnson to keep Chris Morgan like you asked Shane Waldron to keep Chris Morgan, do you? I mean, all due respect to Chris Morgan, but Ben Johnson gets to hire whoever the hell he wants, right? Is that how that goes?
He does. He does get to hire who he wants, and I'm sure he knows that his offensive line coach is probably one of his more important hires on his staff, probably right under defensive coordinator, right? So it's going to be extremely important who your offensive line guy is, guys. There's not a lot of great ones out there, right? And when they're really good, they're usually employed. So it'd be interesting to see who he goes after, who he wants in there helping him with the run game and develop offensive linemen. And we all know, we've talked about it way too many damn times on this show, offensive line development at Haugh. It has been a problem, is still a problem. Running the ball, protecting the quarterback, all those things extremely important for Ben Johnson as he takes his day at Haugh. And I'm sure he's watched a little bit about it, heard about it. A guy like this, guys, he's watching film. He's breaking down the roster. He was looking at 3 or 4 different teams, right? Patriots, Raiders, Jaguars, Bears. So he came to the Bears. He knew where they were deficient. He knows what needs to be improved. He knows what is the problems. Now we talked about what's the difference between the offense coordinator and being a head coach. Now when you're the head coach, now you have to develop every room in the building. Who is your strength staff, right? Who is your strength coach helping you develop young linemen? Who are the new guys you want to get in the building to help you run the scheme that you need to run.
I wonder, Olin, what he will want in offensive linemen in terms of their talent and their profiles. I'm thinking about the interior, thinking about the center position, which you played so beautifully, and the Bears have struggled with since you stopped, frankly. And the guard position, like knowing how the Lions played offensive line and how the Bears have, what kind of players, what kind of profile do you think Ben Johnson will want in the interior of this line, which desperately needs to be rebuilt?
It's a great question, right? And if you look at the Detroit Lions, he wants first-round picks, right? He wants those guys like Taylor Decker, Frank Ragnow, and Penei Sewell, Penei Sewell and Lane Johnson, two best right tackles in the NFL right now. Penei Sewell is a freak. His athletic ability, the way he shuts guys down, the way Ben Johnson moved them around, put him at left tackle, tackle over, put him at tight end, put him in motion, all those things, right? Speed in the NFL. You're just looking for guys who can block, man. You want guys who can block people. There are not a lot of them. There are not a lot of elite NFL blockers. You had a really good center in Frank Ragnow there in Detroit. Guy's a really good football player, understands the schemes, understands the fronts, makes line calls, helps the quarterback get things moving. So he knows what it looks like at that pivot position when you have a guy who can actually, the center has to process information also. He has to make calls. He has to get the offensive line going in the right direction. He's got to point out the mic. He's got to get everybody on the right block, and then he's got to make his block. So very important position for them. I think they know it by now. Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson. I'm sure, guys, these are questions that were asked before he took the job, right? These are things that were addressed. There's no way you don't look at the Chicago Bears the last 3 years and say, hey, man, what's the plan with the offensive line, right? What direction are we going? Are you putting assets there? Are we planning on putting draft picks in that room, a few free agents, and then a very good football coach, and make that room a priority for our offense?
What do you hope Caleb is doing now that he knows it's Ben Johnson? Like, where are the places where you would want him to be drilling stuff to get him ready to play in this particular offense?
Honestly, if it's me and I got Ben Johnson, Lawrence, I don't want to be anywhere else, but I want to just do exactly what Ben Johnson tells me to do. Right, I'm going to do everything he tells me to do. I'm going to get as many voices out of my head, out of the room as possible. I don't need my special coaches anymore. I don't need any of those guys anymore, right? I don't need all the guys that are making a ton of money now because of collective bargaining agreement, right? Because you can't be in the building and you can't do the work with the coaches and all the hours. All I need to do is what Ben Johnson tells me to do. I'm just going to buy totally in to what this guy is selling because that's the way it works, guys. The quarterback has to buy totally in to what the head coach and the OC is selling. And that's what he has to do. That's what Caleb has to do. That's how you become the leader of the football team. That's how you make this thing work. That's how you define culture at Haugh. You just do what Ben Johnson tells you to do, and you tell your all those guys, all your specialty coaches have been making all their money. I've had enough already. I know everything you got to say. I've developed my game as much as you needed me to develop. Now I'm just going to do it the way this guy wants me to do it. Right? I'm going to take all the voices out. I'm going to take everything else out of my head. I'm going to do exactly what Ben Johnson tells me to do because this is what I asked for on podcasts. I asked for an offensive coach. They got you the guy everybody wanted. They put him in the building. You got your coach. Do what he tells you to do. Develop your game. Do it the way he wants you to do it. Get all the other voices out of your head.
Such good stuff from Olin Kreutz. Olin, it's amazing. It's an incredible moment here because I'm told by people that know that Kevin Warren had a big effect on the McCaskies. He had a big effect on them stepping outside of their comfort zone to do some things that had to be done to get this coach with some power, with some voice. And then how about this? Can you imagine George McCaskey sitting down and signing his name to a $13 million a year contract for a head coach? Oh, there's no hourly in there as far as we know. It's per year and it's $13 million. It's like, I think the McCaskies really stepped up here.
They did. And that's the going rate for a good football coach nowadays. And what that tells you is how much they're all making up there at Haugh, right? So there's a lot of money in football, right? We all know gambling's legal now. New stadiums are being built. They got streaming services. They got podcasts. They got all this money up there at Haugh. They have 50 million people, right? They have 50 million people they're employing up there to do nothing. You might as well give the head coach money.
I thought about something you told us a long time ago, when I saw it today, and Ben Johnson actually spoke to it. And that made me really excited because I'm like, oh, wait, Ben Johnson and Olin are on the same page. He basically, when addressing everyone at Haugh, said what you said about player development, that everyone who isn't a player, their job is player development. He said that the most important thing is the guys in the locker room, that everyone there is there to help them.
Yeah, and all the guys, people at Haugh went behind some hallway and were like, what's he talking about? Like, no way. But no, he's right. Right. And you know, you could tell a guy who's coached with a former player, right, Lawrence? Dan Campbell probably preached that every day in Detroit. And that is correct. If you are at Haugh, if you go by nutritionist, if you go by strength coach, if you go by media guy, if you go by whatever you go by, you are player development, right? You are in there to make the players better at what they do. That is your job. So that building has failed for a while now. Ben Johnson put them on notice right there, man. And that is a great statement by him. And like you're saying, Lawrence, and like we've been talking about, those are the things you hear about him. And that's why you can't help, even though it's the Chicago Bears, you can't help but be excited for this guy to be in that building, right? When we talk about taking the gray out for players, telling them exactly what he expects out of them, setting the standard every day, discipline, intensity, and then walking in and telling the people who are clapping for him, yelling and cheering, look, your job is to help make these players better so we can win football games. You're excited to hear that? Excited to see what his staff's going to be. Excited to get him and a young quarterback together and see where he can take the Chicago Bears football team.
Did you overlap with Dennis Allen at all during his New Orleans stints, Olin?
No, I mean, I was there for, 6 months. So, no, and I didn't, I wasn't, Greg Williams. Greg Williams is the defensive coordinator
that's right.
When I was there in New Orleans. But, no, I didn't. But that's an exciting name, right, guys, because you think about a guy who's been a head coach, obviously very good defensive coordinator. But you talk about many times about when you look at the history of the Chicago Bears, right? And that, to me, is the first thing Ben Johnson should study. Go all the way back to the 80s and just study them all the way through and see why they failed and why they've succeeded and what's been going on there and the turnover and who was in the building when they won and who was in the building when they lost. And you just take a look at things when 2006 Super Bowl, Ron Rivera, right? Ron Rivera is in there coaching defense, a lot of good coaches in the building, Lovie Smith, Ron Turner, former head coach at Illinois, right? And then 2010 NFC Championship game, Mike Bartz, Mike Tice, Rod Marinelli. It takes a lot of guys to win football games. He knows that. You can tell by the names that are leaking out at Haugh. His agency, right, is from Chicago. They know the history of Chicago. They know what needs to be done there. They probably have a plan. You're just hoping it works out.
We all are hoping that it works out. This has been a good first step, though, because I was really concerned that Las Vegas was going to swoop in and Tom Brady was going to do his thing and they were going to get the guy that the Bears wanted. Not that I would have been upset with Mike McCarthy. I feel like his resume was worthy of taking a long second look at it. But it's impressive to me that they got not just the guy they wanted, but the guy that everyone else wanted. And that's a big old switch from what the Bears are used to as an organization.
Yeah, they went and got the young guy, right? The young offense runner, the young coach, and the guy that, like you're saying, everybody wanted, everybody knew if the Chicago Bears were going to get him, they would have to pay a lot of money. So that's why the Las Vegas Raiders were favored to get Ben Johnson, probably right, Tom Brady there, and trying to convince him to come down and putting a full court press on him. But Chicago Bears, Kevin Warren, the new president, Ryan Poles, the embattled general manager, Jordan McCaskey, went out and got their guys. And I know in the end of the day, they got to win football games when the season starts, but they did go and get the guy they wanted, something that a lot of us who've been here a long time would say, no way are they going to do that. No way are they going to give Ben Johnson $13 million. I'm just wondering how they get from my $15 to his $13 million.
That's what I'm saying. Kevin Warren, I mean, you got to reach out to Kevin.
Is Ben that much better? Yes, he is. He is that much better.
But right, that's a big scale though between 15 an hour and 13 million. Yeah. Like there's a
what is that? My math is bad. What is 13 million minus 15.75?
Oh, it's up 75. I didn't realize you got that extra 75 cents.
No, I threw that in to make the math harder.
Yeah.
Oh, as always, we appreciate your insight. Thank you, sir.